I was 35 when my world crumbled like a house of cards. My name is Marissa, and I thought I had built a life with a foundation of trust and love with my husband, James. We had moved from Chicago to his small hometown in Maine 3 years ago because he wanted us to be closer to family. What I didn't know was that I was walking into an elaborate trap that would test everything I believed about myself. That cold November day, I returned early from my business trip, excited to prepare a special Thanksgiving dinner. Instead, I found our house empty, except for my husband's stepfather sitting in a rocking chair. A note on the counter read, "Gone on a cruise with my ex. You'll stay home and take care of stepdad, he needs you." The stepfather opened one eye and said, "Shall we begin?" I nodded. Before I tell you what happened next, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments, hit that like and subscribe button, and let me know if you've ever had that gut feeling that something in your relationship just wasn't right. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for this one. My life before this nightmare began was everything I had worked hard to achieve. I had a thriving career in marketing at a prestigious firm in Chicago, where I had steadily climbed the ranks to become a senior manager. James and I had been married for 7 years, and for most of that time we lived in a trendy downtown apartment with views of Lake Michigan. We met at a friend's wedding where he charmed me with stories of his small coastal Maine hometown. His ambition matched mine, or so I thought, as he worked in financial consulting. 3 years ago, James started dropping hints about moving back to his hometown. "The city is draining us," he would say over dinner. "We never see family. My stepfather Harold is getting older and needs someone nearby." At first I resisted. My career was in Chicago, my friends were there, and the thought of small-town life terrified me. "Just think about it, Marissa," James had pleaded one night. "We could buy that old Victorian house I showed you, renovate it together, start fresh where people care about each other. Family first, remember?" That phrase, family first, became his mantra. After months of discussions and promises that I could continue my career remotely with occasional trips to the office, I relented. We sold our apartment, bought the Victorian house in his hometown of Millfield, and I arranged a flexible working situation with my company. The transition was harder than I expected. While the house was beautiful with its wraparound porch and ocean views, I felt like an outsider in Millfield. Everyone knew James welcomed him back with open arms and regarded me with polite curiosity. "The city girl," they called me when they thought I couldn't hear. James assured me we'd build a wonderful life there. "Once Harold meets you properly, he'll love you," he promised. "He raised me after my dad died, you know. He's a bit gruff, but he has a good heart." I had only met Harold twice before the move, once at our wedding, and once during a brief Christmas visit. He was a tall, stern man with piercing blue eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they saw. At our wedding, he had given a toast that felt more like a warning than a blessing. "Marriage is about sacrifice," he had said, raising his glass. "Someone always sacrifices more." At the time, I thought it was an odd sentiment from a man who had been married 3 times. After we moved to Millfield, I threw myself into renovating our house while maintaining my career through video conferences and monthly trips to Chicago. James seemed to drift, taking much longer than expected to find a new position at a local financial firm. He spent most days visiting Harold or reconnecting with old friends I never seemed to meet. The week before Thanksgiving, I had to fly to New York for an important presentation. Our biggest client was launching a new product line, and as the lead on their account, I couldn't miss it. James had been strange about my trip, alternating between distant and clingy. "You'll be back for Thanksgiving, right?" he kept asking, even after I'd shown him my itinerary multiple times. "Wednesday night, like I told you," I would answer. "Plenty of time to prepare everything for Thursday." On my last night in New York, after a successful presentation, I called James from my hotel room. "Hey, how did it go?" he asked, but I could tell he was distracted. There were voices in the background. "Great, the client loved the campaign. Who's there with you?" "Just some old friends. High school reunion planning committee meeting." I had never heard about any reunion before. "That sounds fun. Anyone I know?" "No, just people from way back. Listen, I should go. They're waiting on me. I love you." He hung up before I could respond. Something felt off, but I pushed the feeling away. The next morning, I made a spontaneous decision to take an earlier flight and surprise James. I'd get home Tuesday night instead of Wednesday. We could have a quiet evening together before the holiday preparations. My flight landed at Portland International at 7 p.m. I rented a car for the hour drive to Millfield, my mind filled with plans for Thanksgiving dinner. James and I hadn't been connecting well lately, and I hoped the holiday would bring us back together. As I drove through the familiar winding roads leading to our house, I texted James to see if he needed anything from the store. No response. I figured he might be visiting Harold or out with friends. When I turned onto our street, I noticed an unfamiliar car in our driveway, a red convertible that looked expensive and out of place in our neighborhood. I parked on the street, grabbed my suitcase, and walked up the path to our front door. The house was strangely dark for 8:30 p.m. Usually James left lights on in the living room and kitchen until bedtime. "James," I called as I entered, flipping on the entryway light. "I'm home early. Surprise." The silence that greeted me was unsettling. Our house had never felt so empty, so still. But then I heard it, the soft creak of wood from our living room, the sound of our antique rocking chair moving back and forth on the hardwood floor. I stepped into the living room and flipped the switch, but nothing happened. The bulb must have burned out. In the dim light spilling from the entryway, I could make out a figure in the rocking chair by the window. Not James's broad shoulders, but the thinner frame of an older man. "Harold," I asked, confused about why my husband's stepfather would be sitting alone in the dark in our house. "Where's James?" Harold stopped rocking. In the shadows, his face looked gaunt, almost skull-like. "Marissa," he said, his voice raspier than I remembered. "You're early." A chill ran down my spine. "I wanted to surprise James. Do you know where he is?" Harold gestured vaguely toward the kitchen. "He left something for you." My confusion growing by the second I walked to the kitchen and turned on the light. Everything was immaculate, unlike the usual mess James left when cooking. On the counter sat a folded piece of paper with my name written on it in James's handwriting. With trembling hands I opened it and read, "Marissa. By the time you read this, I'll be on a cruise to the Bahamas with Amanda. Yes, my ex. I should have told you before, but it's always been her. I've never stopped loving her. Harold needs someone to look after him for the next 2 weeks. His health has been declining. I know you'll do this because you're a good person. All the instructions for his medications are in the guest room where he's staying. I'm sorry it worked out this way. James." I read the note 3 times, sure I had misunderstood. Amanda. His high school girlfriend. The one he claimed was ancient history, and he expected me to babysit Harold while he vacationed with her. My legs gave out and I sank into a kitchen chair. The room spun around me as the implications hit one after another. James had planned this. He had waited until I was away on business. The reunion committee voices I had heard were probably Amanda. And Harold knew. I stormed back into the living room, flipping on lamps as I went. Harold sat watching me, his expression unreadable. "Did you know about this?" I demanded, waving the note. Harold nodded slowly. "For some time." "And you're okay with it? With him abandoning his wife to run off with an ex-girlfriend? With him dumping you here like some kind of package delivery?" A thin smile crossed Harold's face. "Amanda isn't just an ex-girlfriend, Marissa. She was his wife first before you. High school sweethearts, married at 19, the love of his life." Each word felt like a slap. His wife. He told me they dated in high school. He never said they were married. "For 3 years, Harold confirmed, until I convinced him he needed to experience the world before settling down in Millfield. He left, they divorced, and then he met you." My head throbbed with questions. But why now? Why like this? Harold's blue eyes, so like James's, studied me. "Amanda moved back to town 6 months ago after her second divorce, when James saw her again." He trailed off, but the implication was clear. 6 months. Around the time James had become distant, distracted. All those evenings he spent helping Harold or meeting old friends. I had been so blind. "So what now?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "He expects me to just wait here taking care of you while he's off with her for 2 weeks. Harold shrugged. "Those are his expectations. I have some needs, yes. Medication 4 times daily, help with meals, occasional assistance with bathing." I felt sick. "I'm calling him right now." I pulled out my phone and dialed James. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again with the same result. Of course he would have turned it off or blocked my number. "He won't answer," Harold said. "The cruise ship left this morning. They're probably in international waters by now." I began searching the house, looking for something, anything that would explain this insanity further. In James's office, I found travel brochures for Caribbean cruises, dated from 3 months ago. In the trash, a printed email confirmation for 2 passengers, James Wilson and Amanda Wilson. They had used the same last name. In our bedroom, James's side of the closet was half empty. He had taken clothes, but carefully, nothing I would notice missing during our brief phone conversations while I was away. Back in the kitchen, I checked our joint bank account on my phone. The balance that should have been close to $50,000 now showed just under $5,000. He had cleaned us out, leaving just enough to maintain appearances. "He took our money," I said, returning to the living room where Harold still sat rocking. "Not all of it," Harold pointed out. "Just his share, I imagine." "His share?" I laughed bitterly. "I earn twice what he does. Most of that money was from my bonuses." Harold's expression turned serious. "You might want to check the account holder names carefully, Marissa. James has always been thorough about financial matters." A new wave of nausea hit me as I returned to my phone and looked at the account details I had never bothered to verify before. The primary account holder, James Wilson. Secondary authorized user, Marissa Wilson. It had never been our joint account. It had always been his. I looked up to find Harold watching me with something like pity in his eyes. "I'll need my evening medication soon," he said quietly. "And then perhaps we should discuss the sleeping arrangements. James set up the guest room for me, but I have trouble with stairs at night. Perhaps you could take that room and I could use your bedroom." The request, so practical and presumptuous, broke something in me. I started laughing, a high, slightly hysterical sound that echoed through our high-ceilinged living room. "This is insane," I finally managed. "All of it. I'm not doing this." Harold tilted his head. "Then what will you do?" "Leave an old man to fend for himself. James seems quite certain you won't do that. Something about your nurturing nature and sense of responsibility." He was right, and that knowledge made everything worse. James had calculated exactly how I would react. He knew I wouldn't abandon an elderly man with health problems regardless of the circumstances. He had counted on my basic human decency and weaponized it against me. Harold leaned forward in his rocking chair, his eyes suddenly clearer and more focused than they had been all evening. "Shall we begin?" he asked, gesturing toward the kitchen, where presumably his medication waited. I felt trapped, cornered by manipulation and my own principles. With no immediate alternative, I nodded silently, already wondering how I had ended up here and how I would find my way out. The next morning, I woke up disoriented in our guest bedroom. For a moment, I thought perhaps the previous night had been a nightmare. Then I heard Harold shuffling around downstairs, and reality crashed back. My husband was gone. He had left me to care for his stepfather while he rekindled his relationship with an ex-wife I hadn't known existed. I reached for my phone and called my office. "Family emergency," I explained to my boss. "I need a few more days." He was understanding, offering me the rest of the week plus the following Monday. 5 days to figure out what to do. When I finally went downstairs, Harold was in the kitchen attempting to make coffee. "Good you're up," he said, as if this were a normal morning. "I can't seem to work this fancy machine of yours." "It's not mine," I said flatly. "James bought it." I pushed past him and set up the coffee maker, automatically, my mind elsewhere. "Did you sleep well?" Harold asked, settling at the kitchen table. "I was up most of the night. My arthritis acts up in damp weather." I ignored the obvious bid for sympathy. "Why did you agree to this, Harold being dumped here with me? Don't you have your own home?" Harold sighed. "My house is being renovated. Bathroom remodeled to make it more accessible. James suggested I stay here while it's completed. And the timing just happened to coincide with his cruise." I couldn't keep the sarcasm from my voice. James has always been efficient. Harold's eyes, so like his stepson's, watched me carefully. Amanda's return created an opportunity. "An opportunity," I repeated, "to blow up his marriage." Harold accepted the coffee I handed him. Amanda was always the one for him. Everyone in town knew it. Those two were inseparable from kindergarten until he left for college. "Then why did they divorce?" I asked, sitting across from him. A shadow crossed Harold's face. I told you. I convinced James he needed to experience the world. The boy had potential beyond this small town. Amanda wanted to stay open a local business, start having babies right away. He took a sip of coffee. I helped him see that would be a mistake. Something about his tone raised the hair on the back of my neck. You separated them deliberately. Harold didn't deny it. For James's benefit. He got his degree, built a career in Chicago. Met you. He said the last part like it had been an unfortunate side effect rather than the beginning of our marriage. And now you're helping him throw it all away to go back to her. I shook my head in disbelief. I'm merely supporting his decision. Harold's thin shoulders lifted in a slight shrug. Amanda has matured. Her business is successful now. The timing is right for them to reconnect. I stood up abruptly. I'm going to take a shower. Your medications are on the counter. Take the blue pill with food. I needed space, needed to think without his watchful eyes on me. Under the hot water, I allowed myself to cry for the first time since finding that note. 7 years of marriage gone in an instant. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that I couldn't process it all at once. After my shower, I called 2 of James's cousins who lived nearby, hoping to pawn Harold off on actual family members. Both gave me the same response: they had plans for Thanksgiving and couldn't possibly help. Their awkward tones told me they knew exactly what James had done. Next, I called our neighbor Martha, who had always been friendly to me, despite my outsider status. "Oh, Marissa," she said when I asked if she'd heard anything about James and Amanda. "Everyone's talking about it. Those 2 were always meant to be together. Star-crossed lovers, you know. It was such a shame when Harold broke them up years ago." My stomach dropped. Everyone knows how long. Martha's hesitation spoke volumes. "Well, they've been seen around town together for a few months now. At the Lighthouse restaurant, walking on the beach. People were wondering when they'd make it official." "And no one thought to tell me?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Oh, honey," Martha said. "We all figured you knew. Weren't you 2 having problems?" I hung up without answering. Months. James and Amanda had been carrying on for months, and the entire town knew. I was the only one in the dark, the clueless city wife who didn't understand small-town dynamics. I spent the rest of the morning calling local hotels, only to discover they were all booked for the holiday weekend. Even if I wanted to leave, I had nowhere to go on such short notice. My friends in Chicago were all traveling for Thanksgiving. My parents had retired to Arizona years ago. Harold spent the day alternating between watching television and making small requests: a glass of water, help finding a book, questions about when lunch would be ready. Each interaction reinforced the bizarre domestic arrangement James had engineered. By afternoon, I had discovered more evidence of James's deception. Old photos in the attic showed James and Amanda at prom, at graduation, at their wedding. Harold appeared in many of them, always standing slightly apart watching. In our home office, I found financial documents showing James had been moving money between accounts for months, preparing for his exit. That evening, I ventured out to buy groceries for Thanksgiving dinner, a meal I was now apparently cooking for just myself and Harold. At the store, I felt eyes on me. People whispered as I passed. The checkout clerk gave me a pitying look. "Will it just be the 2 of you tomorrow?" she asked, scanning my much smaller turkey and single pumpkin pie. "Apparently," I replied, keeping my tone even. "Such a shame," she said. "Everyone thought James and Amanda would have a big family Thanksgiving to announce their reunion officially." I left without responding, humiliation burning through me. In one day, I had gone from respected professional to abandoned wife and caretaker, the subject of town gossip and pity. When I returned home, Harold was on the phone. He hung up quickly when I entered. "Who was that?" I asked, setting down the groceries. "Amanda's mother," he said casually, checking on me, and not asking how James's wife is handling being abandoned at Thanksgiving. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Harold's expression hardened. "This town has long memories, Marissa. Amanda's family has been here for generations. James was meant to marry her, have children with her, take over her father's business. You were always temporary, a phase." His words hit like physical blows. A 7-year phase. Sometimes it takes a while to find your way home. Harold stood with surprising agility for a man who had needed help reaching a book on a low shelf earlier. Amanda's mother invited us for Thanksgiving dinner, by the way. I told her we would come. Absolutely not, I said, appalled. I'm not going to sit at a table celebrating my husband's affair. Reunion, Harold corrected. And it would save you the trouble of cooking. I laughed incredulously. I'd rather starve. Harold studied me with those calculating eyes. James said you might be difficult initially. He's prepared for that. What does that mean? I demanded. It means, Harold said, his voice suddenly stronger, that he expects you to adjust to the new arrangement when he returns. The house will remain your home. You'll simply be sharing it with all of us. The room seemed to tilt. Sharing? You can't be serious. Why waste money on divorce when an arrangement can be made? You keep your job, your stability. James and Amanda get their second chance. Harold spoke as if proposing a business merger. Many marriages evolve over time, become more practical. I stared at him, finally understanding. This wasn't just about James reconnecting with an old flame. This was about an entire future they had planned, one where I was conveniently slotted in as the financial provider and caretaker while they built the life they wanted. Get out, I whispered. Harold raised an eyebrow. Pardon. Get out of my house, I shouted, my control finally snapping. Call Amanda's mother. Call a cab. I don't care. But you are not staying here tonight. Harold didn't move. This isn't your house, Marissa. It's James's family home. His grandmother left it to him. Your name isn't even on the deed. Another revelation, another betrayal. I had contributed to the down payment paid for most of the renovations, but legally the house wasn't mine. I had never thought to check. James will be very disappointed to hear about your attitude, Harold continued. He thought you would handle this maturely. The calculated manipulation in his tone pushed me over the edge. I grabbed my purse and car keys. Where are you going? Harold asked, suddenly concerned. My evening medication is on the counter with instructions, I finished for him. You seem perfectly capable of taking it yourself. I drove aimlessly around town, eventually parking at the beach overlook where James had proposed to me during our first visit to his hometown. The irony wasn't lost on me. As I sat watching the waves crash against the rocky shore, I called my friend Sophia in Chicago. He did what? She exclaimed after I explained the situation. Marissa, get out of there. Come stay with us. Today. Now. I can't just leave an elderly man alone. Sophia, I said, hating that my own ethics were keeping me trapped. Yes, you can. He's not your responsibility. Call Adult Protective Services if you're worried, but this is insane. She was right, but something kept me from agreeing. Perhaps it was shock, or perhaps some part of me needed to understand how my marriage had unraveled so completely without my knowledge. I'll think about it, I promised. Let me get through Thanksgiving first. When I returned to the house 3 hours later, Harold was asleep in my bed, our marital bed having taken my room despite my earlier objection. Too exhausted to argue, I returned to the guest room and fell into a fitful sleep. Thanksgiving morning dawned cold and gray, perfectly matching my mood. I woke early and began preparing the small dinner I had planned. Cooking had always been therapeutic for me, and I desperately needed something normal to focus on. Harold appeared around 10, dressed in one of James's sweaters. Happy Thanksgiving, he said, as if nothing were amiss. The turkey smells wonderful. I continued chopping vegetables without responding. The absurdity of preparing a holiday meal for my husband's stepfather, while that same husband cruised the Caribbean with his ex-wife, wasn't lost on me. Amanda always burned the turkey, Harold commented, settling at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. Every year without fail. It became something of a tradition in their marriage. James would carve it, pretend it was perfect, and everyone would choke it down. I set down my knife. Why are you telling me this? Harold's eyes gleamed. Just reminiscing. They were so young when they married, barely 19, high school sweethearts from the time they were 14. And you broke them up, I said flatly. It wasn't a question. Harold nodded, seemingly pleased I was engaging. I did what was best for James. Amanda would have trapped him here. 3 kids by 25 working for her father's construction company, living paycheck to paycheck. James had potential for more. So you sent him away to college. I did better than that, Harold corrected. I convinced Amanda's father to offer James a job in their Boston office, knowing James would accept to prove himself worthy. Once he was gone, I made sure Amanda heard rumors about James enjoying city life a little too much, and I made sure James heard that Amanda was spending time with her ex-boyfriend. The calculated manipulation took my breath away. You lied to both of them. Harold shrugged. I created a situation that allowed James to break free and find his potential. And he did. Business degree, MBA, successful career. And you expect me to believe you're now supporting their reunion after going to such lengths to separate them. I studied his face, trying to understand his game. Something flickered in Harold's expression. People change. Amanda has built a successful interior design business. She's established, mature. James has experienced the world. The timing is right for them now. I returned to preparing the meal, mulling over his words. Something wasn't adding up. And where do I fit into this perfect reunion? Harold sipped his coffee. James values stability. Your income allows him flexibility. This house needs a caretaker, and I'm not getting any younger. The truth hit me like ice water. You want to live in nurse. That's what this is about. James gets his high school sweetheart, you get a caretaker, and I get… what exactly? Financial security, a beautiful home, purpose. Harold listed these benefits as if offering me a generous package. Many would consider it a reasonable arrangement. I laughed bitterly. Many would consider it grounds for divorce. Harold's expression hardened. James hoped you would be more practical, more understanding. After all, your career has always come first. This arrangement would allow you to continue focusing on that without the demands of a traditional marriage. By the time I placed the turkey stuffing mashed potatoes and green bean casserole on the dining room table, at 3 o'clock I was seething with anger. We sat across from each other in silence for several minutes. Finally, I raised my water glass in a mocking toast. To practical arrangements. Harold studied me. You're taking this quite personally, Marissa. It's merely an evolution of your relationship with James. An evolution where he sleeps with his ex-wife while I cook Thanksgiving dinner for his stepfather. That's not evolution, Harold. That's betrayal. Harold cut into his turkey methodically. James will be disappointed by your emotional reaction. He thought you would understand given your independent nature, your focus on career. My independence doesn't mean I want to be in a sham marriage. I set down my fork with a clatter. And my career focus doesn't mean I deserve to be lied to and manipulated. Harold's mask of frailty slipped further. Amanda's family has influence in this town. The house belongs to James. Your financial entanglements are more complex than you realize. Fighting this arrangement would be difficult and costly. Is that a threat? I asked quietly. Merely an observation. Harold took a bite of stuffing. James expects you to have accepted reality by the time he returns. He's prepared to be generous if you cooperate. And if I don't… Harold's cold smile made me shiver. James has always been thorough about protecting his interests. I taught him that. After dinner, while Harold napped, I searched James's office more thoroughly. In a locked drawer I managed to open with a letter opener, I found a folder containing legal documents, including a prenuptial agreement with my signature. I had no memory of signing it. Looking closer, I realized with horror that the signature page had been taken from another document, a rental agreement we had signed years ago. James had doctored a prenup and attached my signature from a completely different document. I continued searching and found transfer documents showing James had moved ownership of our house solely into his name 6 months ago, right around when Amanda returned to town. There were also financial statements indicating he had been systematically transferring funds from our joint accounts to a private account for nearly a year. My phone rang, startling me, a number I didn't recognize. Hello. Is this Marissa Wilson? A woman's voice asked. Yes. Who's this? This is Carol Jenkins, Amanda's mother. Her voice was tight with what sounded like concern. I'm calling about Harold. Is he taking his heart medication? He had an episode at our house last week, and I want to make sure he's following the doctor's orders. Heart medication, I repeated, confused. He takes arthritis medication and something for blood pressure. There was a long pause. Marissa Harold had a mild heart attack 3 weeks ago. He's on strict medication and is supposed to be on bed rest. James brought him to the hospital. I'm surprised he didn't tell you." My mind raced. James had never mentioned any heart attack, and Harold certainly wasn't behaving like someone on bed rest. "Mrs. Jenkins, when exactly did James tell you he was going on this cruise?" Another pause. "The cruise was Amanda's idea, actually. They left Sunday morning. Amanda thought it would give them time to discuss how to approach you about their relationship. She feels terrible about the situation." So Amanda had some conscience, at least. "And Harold, was the plan always for him to stay with me?" "Heavens, no!" Mrs. Jenkins sounded shocked. "James asked if Harold could stay with us, but then Harold insisted he would be fine at his own house. His neighbor checks on him daily." None of this matched what Harold had told me. "Mrs. Jenkins, thank you for calling. I need to go now." I hung up and immediately called Harold's neighbor, whose number I found in James's contacts. "Harold's staying with you?" the neighbor asked, confused. "He told us he was going to his sister's in Portland for Thanksgiving." The web of lies was unraveling. Harold had manipulated everyone, James, Amanda, me, even Amanda's family. But why I had just hung up when I heard a crash from the bedroom. I raced upstairs to find Harold on the floor, clutching his chest, his face gray. "My pills," he gasped, "in my bag." Despite everything, I couldn't ignore someone in medical distress. I grabbed his overnight bag from the corner and dug through it, finding an unmarked pill bottle. "These?" I asked, showing him. He nodded weakly. I helped him take one, then called 911. In the emergency room, I was shocked to discover that Harold had indeed suffered a heart attack 3 weeks ago, but according to his doctor, he had been ignoring medical advice ever since refusing to rest or take his medication regularly. "He's been staying with you?" the doctor asked, reviewing Harold's chart. "Temporarily," I said, not wanting to explain the bizarre situation. The doctor frowned. "He shouldn't be staying alone, and he certainly shouldn't be skipping doses of his heart medication. Did you know he checked himself out of cardiac rehab against medical advice last week?" Each revelation painted a clearer picture of Harold's manipulations. By the time they admitted him for overnight observation, I had pieced together a disturbing theory. In the hospital waiting room, I called my boss. "Remember that family emergency? It just got more complicated. I need to extend my leave." To my surprise, he was immediately supportive. "Take all the time you need, Marissa. Family comes first." That phrase, "family comes first," echoed in my head. It had been James's mantra when convincing me to move to Millfield. Now I wondered if it had been Harold's words all along. As I drove home from the hospital, I called my college roommate Laura, now a successful attorney in Boston. "I need legal advice," I told her, explaining the situation in detail. "First," Laura said when I finished, "document everything. Take photos of any evidence you found. Forward emails to an account James doesn't know about. Second, don't confront anyone yet. And third, get a forensic accountant to look at your finances. Something doesn't add up." Following her advice, I spent the evening photographing documents, changing passwords on my personal accounts, and creating a detailed timeline of events. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how methodically I had been set up. When I checked on Harold the next morning, a nurse pulled me aside. "Are you aware that Mr. Blackwood has been refusing his medication here too? We found pills hidden under his mattress." "That sounds like him," I said grimly. "There's something else." The nurse hesitated. "He's been making phone calls telling someone named James that you've abandoned him, that you refused to help when he collapsed." The final piece clicked into place. Harold was creating a narrative where I was the villain, the cold, career-focused wife who neglected her elderly stepfather-in-law during a medical crisis. If James believed that version of events, it would give him moral justification for whatever he had planned next. I thanked the nurse and left, driving straight to the office of a private investigator Laura had recommended. It was time to gather evidence and prepare for war. Over the next 6 days, I executed a careful plan. With the help of Laura and the private investigator, I documented every aspect of James and Harold's deception. We discovered that James had been quietly liquidating assets and transferring them into accounts only he controlled. We found evidence that Harold had a pattern of manipulating family situations. He had done similar things with James's mother and his previous wives. Most disturbing was the discovery of hidden cameras in our bedroom and living room installed months ago. James had been monitoring me, perhaps looking for evidence he could use against me if needed. While Harold remained in the hospital, I took the opportunity to search his belongings more thoroughly. In his overnight bag, I found a journal detailing his long-term plans, how he had orchestrated James and Amanda's reunion to secure his own future, how he intended to eventually move into our house permanently with me as his caretaker. "The wife is career-focused and malleable," he had written. "Once James reestablishes with Amanda, we can implement the shared household arrangement. Marissa's income will support all of us, while Amanda provides the emotional connection James needs. I'll ensure my care is guaranteed until death." The cold calculation was breathtaking. Harold had been playing a long game, manipulating all of us like chess pieces, and I had nearly fallen into his trap, my own ethics and decency weaponized against me. I contacted Amanda's sister, the only family member who had reached out with genuine concern. She revealed that Harold had been planting seeds of reconciliation between James and Amanda for over a year, telling each of them the other was unhappy and thinking of them. He had engineered their chance encounters around town. Amanda was vulnerable after her divorce, she explained, and Harold always had this strange hold over James. He convinced Amanda that James had never stopped loving her, that you were a temporary obstacle. Armed with this information, I made my final preparations. The private investigator discovered that James's Caribbean cruise was scheduled to return the next day, a day earlier than Harold had claimed. I decided to be ready. That night, I received an unexpected call from Amanda herself. "Marissa," she began hesitantly, "I owe you an apology. I never intended for things to happen this way." "Yet here we are," I replied coolly. "You're on a cruise with my husband." "I left the cruise," she said, surprising me. 3 days ago in Jamaica. James has been lying to both of us. He told me you two were separated, that you had agreed to divorce amicably. Then I found messages on his phone to Harold discussing some plan to maintain a practical arrangement with you. So James's betrayal extended to Amanda as well. Did you know about the financial manipulations, the fake prenup, the hidden cameras? Her shocked silence was answer enough. "Hidden cameras? What are you talking about?" "James has been planning this for months," I explained. "Moving money, documenting my work hours, trying to build a case that I'm an absent wife who prioritizes career over family." "That's not what he told me." Amanda's voice shook. "He said you two had grown apart naturally, that you were more interested in your career than having a family. And you believed that without ever speaking to me, without questioning why he needed to sneak around if everything was so amicable." Amanda's sigh was heavy with regret. "I wanted to believe him. We have history. But the James I've seen these past few days isn't the man I remember. He's calculating, always checking with Harold about next steps. It felt wrong." "Harold is manipulating all of us." I told her about the journal the long con Harold had been running. "That explains so much," Amanda said quietly. "James changed after Harold came to live with him and his mother. He became more secretive, more focused on Harold's approval." We talked for nearly an hour, piecing together Harold's manipulations over the years. By the end, we had formed an unlikely alliance against the two men who had betrayed us both. "What are you going to do?" Amanda asked finally. "Wait for them to return," I said, "and be ready." The next morning, I received a text from James. "Coming home today. Hope you and Harold have bonded. We need to talk about the future." The casual tone, as if he hadn't abandoned me at Thanksgiving to cruise with an ex-wife, made my blood boil. But I kept my response simple, looking forward to it. Hours later, I heard a car pull into the driveway. From the window, I watched James step out, tanned and relaxed-looking. Alone, no Amanda. He grabbed his suitcase and walked toward the front door with the confident stride of a man who expected his plans to unfold perfectly. I sat waiting in the living room in the same rocking chair where I had found Harold a week ago. When James entered, his expression of surprise quickly morphed into a practiced smile. "Marissa," he said, setting down his bag, "we need to talk." "Yes," I agreed calmly. "We do." James stood in the entryway, still holding his keys, looking around cautiously. "Where's Harold?" "Hospital," I replied evenly. "Has been for days. Heart issues." Alarm flashed across his face. What happened? Is he okay? He will be. No thanks to his erratic medication schedule and refusal to follow doctor's orders. I remained in the rocking chair, watching James's every reaction. Interesting that you're concerned now after abandoning him with someone you thought wouldn't notice his condition. James's expression shifted to something more calculated. I didn't abandon him. I left him with you because I trust you, and I knew you two should spend more time together. While you reconnected with your ex-wife on a cruise, I kept my tone neutral, giving nothing away. How was that, by the way, before Amanda left in Jamaica? His eyes widened almost imperceptibly. She told you. We've had several enlightening conversations. I gestured to the couch across from me. Sit down, James. It's time we had an honest discussion. He hesitated, then moved to the couch, perching on the edge as if ready to flee. Marissa, I know this looks bad, but I can explain everything. I'm sure you can. You've had months to craft your explanation while you moved our money, installed hidden cameras, and created a false prenuptial agreement. I watched satisfaction spread through me as each accusation landed like a physical blow. Hidden cameras? James tried to look confused. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult my intelligence. I pointed to the small device I had found behind a picture frame. The investigators found them all, along with the data showing when they were installed and accessed. James's facade cracked further. Investigators, you hired people to spy on me. No, James. I hired people to document what you and Harold were doing to me. I leaned forward. The financial fraud, the document falsification, the conspiracy to deprive me of my legal rights, all of it. He shifted uncomfortably. Marissa, you're blowing this out of proportion. I was going to tell you everything when I got back. About Amanda and me reconnecting. About a new arrangement that could work for everyone. You mean where I continue working to support you while you live with your ex-wife, and I care for Harold, that arrangement. James had the grace to look embarrassed. It sounds bad when you put it like that, but lots of modern families have unconventional structures. I thought given your focus on your career, you might appreciate the freedom this would give you. The freedom to be used as an unpaid nurse and financial provider. I laughed without humor. How generous of you. Harold needs help, James tried again. He raised me after my father died. I owe him. Harold manipulated you your entire life, I countered. He separated you and Amanda years ago when it suited his purposes. Then he orchestrated your reunion when he needed a new caretaking arrangement. James's expression darkened. That's not true. Harold supported my relationship with Amanda. Now, yes, after he engineered your breakup years ago. I reached for the folder beside me and handed him photocopies of Harold's journal entries. Read it yourself. He's been playing all of us. As James read, his face paled beneath his Caribbean tan. This can't be real. It is. Amanda's family confirmed it. Harold told each of you the other was unhappy and thinking of reconnecting. He made sure you had accidental meetings around town. He's been playing puppet master for years. James set down the pages, visibly shaken. Even if that's true about Harold, it doesn't change how I feel about Amanda. We have history. History Harold manipulated, I pointed out. But that's not even my biggest concern right now. My concern is the systematic financial fraud you've committed. James straightened defensively. I haven't committed fraud. Really. Moving joint assets into private accounts, falsifying a prenuptial agreement, transferring property out of my name without consent. My lawyer disagrees with your assessment. The mention of a lawyer finally seemed to penetrate. You've talked to a lawyer, several, along with forensic accountants and fraud investigators. I kept my voice steady. They're quite interested in your creative financial arrangements at your firm, too. Those client accounts you've been skimming from. His face went from pale to ashen. You had no right to look into my work. I had every right to investigate where our money was going, I corrected him. The fraud at your workplace was an unexpected discovery, one I'm legally obligated to report. James stood suddenly. This is ridiculous. You're making threats based on nothing. Am I? I held up my phone, showing him the screen with incriminating emails I had uncovered. Your computer password was still our wedding date, not very creative for someone orchestrating such an elaborate betrayal. Before James could respond, we heard the front door open. Harold shuffled in looking frail and martyred in his hospital gown and robe supported by a nurse. "James," he exclaimed with well-practiced weakness. "Thank God you're back. I've been in the hospital for days. Marissa left me there alone." The nurse beside him frowned. "Actually, Mrs. Wilson has visited twice daily and arranged for your home care, Mr. Blackwood, as I explained in the car." Harold ignored her, focusing on James. "She refused to help when I collapsed. If the neighbors hadn't called an ambulance—" "I called the ambulance, Harold," I interrupted calmly. "After finding you on the floor and giving you your medication, the medication you'd been hiding and skipping." James looked between us, confusion evident on his face. "Harold, what's going on?" "She's trying to turn you against me," Harold said weakly. "After everything I've done for this family." "You mean like manipulating James and Amanda's relationship twice?" I asked. "Or planning to move into our house with me as your permanent nurse? Or helping James hide money before abandoning me at Thanksgiving?" Harold's frail act slipped for a moment, anger flashing in his eyes. "You don't understand what family means. Your career always came first." "My career supported all of us," I corrected him, "while you plotted and James followed your lead like he always has." The nurse, clearly uncomfortable, stepped forward. "I need to get Mr. Blackwood settled. Which room will he be using?" "None," I said firmly. "Harold won't be staying here." Harold's expression turned thunderous. "This is James's house. You can't decide—" "Actually," I interrupted, "as of yesterday, this house belongs to both of us again. I had my attorney file to void the fraudulent transfer James made 6 months ago. Given the evidence of manipulation and fraud, the court granted an emergency petition to restore joint ownership pending our divorce proceedings." James stared at me. "Divorce proceedings? Did you honestly think I would stay after all this?" I asked incredulously. "The betrayal, the lies, the financial manipulation. But the arrangement," James began, "is never going to happen," I finished for him. "Harold will need to return to his own home with the home health aide I've arranged, or go to Amanda's mother's house as originally planned before he changed everyone's arrangements." Harold took a step toward me, his pretense of frailty completely gone. "You ungrateful, careful Harold," I warned. "Remember your heart condition, and remember that everything you say is being recorded for the restraining order hearing tomorrow." James looked like he'd been slapped. "Restraining order. Against both of you," I confirmed. Given the hidden cameras, financial abuse, and Harold's increasingly erratic behavior, my attorney advised it. "The emergency hearing is at 9 tomorrow morning." Harold turned to James, desperation in his eyes. "Don't listen to her. She's trying to destroy everything we've built. Our family was built on manipulation and lies," I finished. "James, I've arranged for you to stay at the Millfield Inn tonight. Your things are packed in the guest room. I suggest you take Harold with you and sort out his care arrangements." "You can't just throw us out," Harold protested. "I'm not. I'm enforcing the temporary court order granting me exclusive use of the property until the hearing tomorrow." I handed James a copy of the document. "You have 30 minutes to collect your immediate necessities. The rest can be arranged through our attorneys." The front door opened again, and 2 police officers stepped in. "Everything okay here, Mrs. Wilson?" the female officer asked. "Yes, Officer Davis. My husband and his stepfather were just leaving to comply with the court order." James looked from me to the officers, finally comprehending the completeness of his defeat. "Marissa, please. We can talk about this. Work something out." "We will through our attorneys." I maintained my composure despite the turmoil inside. 7 years, James. 7 years of what I thought was a partnership, a marriage built on trust and mutual respect, and you threw it away for a scheme Harold concocted. "It wasn't like that," James protested weakly. "I do care for you. Just not enough to be honest, not enough to consider my feelings or future." I shook my head. "The saddest part is that if you had simply told me you wanted to reconnect with Amanda, I would have been hurt, but understood. Instead, you chose deception, manipulation, and fraud." As the reality of the situation sank in, James's shoulders slumped. Without another word, he went upstairs to collect his things. Harold remained glaring at me with undisguised hatred. "This isn't over," he hissed when the officers stepped outside momentarily. "Yes, Harold, it is," I replied calmly. "Your manipulations only work when people are in the dark. I've shared everything with Amanda, with her family, with James's cousins, with my attorneys. Everyone knows exactly who you are now." When James returned with his suitcase, he paused in the doorway looking around the house we had renovated together. "I never meant it to go this far," he said quietly. "But you let it," I pointed out. "Every step of the way you chose deception over honesty. That's something you'll have to live with." As they left, escorted by the officers, I sat back down in the rocking chair. The house felt suddenly enormous and empty, yet somehow I could breathe more freely than I had in months. My phone pinged with a text from Amanda. "Is it done?" "Yes," I replied. "They're gone." "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," I wrote, "we both start over." 6 months after that fateful Thanksgiving, I stood in my new apartment in Boston, hanging the last of my artwork. The bright open space overlooked the harbor a world away from the small coastal Maine town where my marriage had imploded. The divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier, far more favorably than it might have been had I not uncovered James's financial schemes. The evidence of fraud and manipulation had left him little room to negotiate. The house in Millfield had been sold with my share of the proceeds funding my fresh start in Boston. My career had flourished after the crisis. My boss, impressed by my handling of the family emergency, had offered me a promotion to lead our Boston office, a position I had eagerly accepted. The change of scenery had been exactly what I needed to rebuild. I had just finished arranging my bookshelves when my phone rang. It was Laura, my college roommate turned divorce attorney and now rekindled friend. "The papers arrived from Harold," she said without preamble. "He's dropping the countersuit." I smiled, relief washing through me. Harold had attempted to sue me for abandonment and emotional distress, a last desperate attempt at manipulation that had quickly fallen apart under legal scrutiny. "His health must be worse than he's letting on," I said, feeling no satisfaction in the thought. "Otherwise, he would have dragged this out longer." "Actually," Laura replied, "according to my contact at his attorney's office, he's being moved to an assisted living facility next week. Apparently neither James nor Amanda is willing to take him in." The news shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. "What happened with them?" Laura snorted. "The reunion lasted all of 2 months after Thanksgiving. Once Amanda realized James was just as manipulated by Harold as she had been, the old feelings couldn't sustain the new reality. James is still in Millfield working at a local bank. Amanda moved to Portland to expand her design business." I felt a strange mixture of vindication and sadness. No one had won in Harold's games, not really. After we hung up, I finished settling into my new space. On my desk sat a letter that had arrived that morning from Harold, surprisingly. I had debated throwing it away unopened, but curiosity had won out. "Marissa," it read in shaky handwriting. "As I face my own mortality more directly, I find myself reflecting on the damage I've caused. My need to control James's life stemmed from my own failures and fears. I convinced myself I was protecting him, but in truth I was securing my own future at everyone else's expense. I don't expect forgiveness, nor do I deserve it. But I wanted you to know that in the end, your strength impressed even me. Harold." I folded the letter and put it away. Not quite an apology, but as close as a man like Harold could probably come to acknowledging his wrongs. It changed nothing, but somehow helped close a chapter. The following week, I hosted my first Thanksgiving in my new home. Around my table sat friends from work, Laura and her husband, and 2 women I had met through a support group for those recovering from manipulative relationships. The apartment filled with laughter and conversation, so different from the tense, silent meal I had shared with Harold a year earlier. After dinner, as we enjoyed pumpkin pie on my balcony, overlooking the twinkling city lights, Laura nudged me. "Have you told them about running into James last month?" The others looked at me curiously. "It was nothing dramatic," I explained. "He was in Boston for a banking conference. We literally bumped into each other at a coffee shop." "And?" one of my new friends prompted. "And nothing." I shrugged. We exchanged awkward greetings. He asked how I was doing. I said better. He looked tired, diminished somehow. After a minute of strained small talk, we went our separate ways. What I didn't share was the most significant part of that encounter, the complete absence of any emotional reaction on my part. No anger, no pain, not even satisfaction at seeing him reduced. Just a peaceful nothing, as if observing a stranger who had once appeared in a movie I'd watched long ago. That evening after my guests had left, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine reflecting on the journey of the past year. The betrayal that had seemed world-ending had ultimately freed me from a relationship built on shifting sand. I had discovered reserves of strength I never knew I possessed. In the months since the divorce, I had volunteered at a women's center, helping others navigate the complexities of leaving manipulative relationships. Each story I heard reinforced the importance of trusting one's instincts, of recognizing when something feels wrong, even when you can't immediately identify why. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael, an architect I had met through a mutual friend. We had been on 3 dates, taking things slowly, as I cautiously re-entered the world of relationships. "Still on for tomorrow?" he asked. "Looking forward to it," I replied. This new connection was different, transparent, respectful of boundaries, devoid of the subtle manipulations I now recognized so clearly. Whether it developed into something lasting or simply remained a pleasant chapter in my recovery, I was approaching it with open eyes. As I watched the moonlight play across the harbor, I thought about the strange gratitude I now felt for last Thanksgiving's betrayal. Without that catastrophic rupture, I might have continued for years in a marriage undermined by deception, never knowing the freedom of building a life entirely on my own terms. The most valuable lesson hadn't been about James or Harold, or even the importance of financial independence, though that certainly ranked high. It had been learning to recognize manipulation in all its subtle forms and having the courage to stand firm against it. To value myself enough to walk away from those who viewed me as a means to their ends, rather than a person worthy of honesty and respect. Tomorrow would bring new possibilities. A date with someone who seemed genuinely interested in knowing me. A job where my contributions were valued, friends who had stood by me through the darkness, a future I was building on my own terms. For all of that, I was truly thankful. What about you? Have you ever had to rebuild your life after a betrayal? What gave you the strength to move forward? Share your story in the comments, and if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes our hardest moments become our greatest turning points. Thank you for listening, and remember, your worth is never determined by someone else's ability to see it.